Welcome to the Osmo EarlyBird podcast. It's your old pal EMAC coming to you with one Adam, ship my money share, as we look to the Tuesday 4-game slate. It's election day, kids, so don't forget to vote. As long as you're over 18, have a valid ID and a voter registration card, you should be solid. Adam, are you going to go vote tomorrow, or are you going to be complacent in your mom's basement?
No, I'm planning on going. That is contingent on me waking up in time to do so before I get started with work, which I think, as anyone who follows my work over the last couple of years at all knows, is kind of asking a lot. But no, I'm planning on going in the morning.
All right. It's funny. I have people at home can't see, but I've got a variety of voter cards here. They keep changing because I'm in a county that keeps growing. About every other year, they change which school we're going to.
Yeah.
So they just gave us a new card. So I'll be on my third voting place since I've moved to this house about 8 years ago. So anyway,
I had to look it up earlier today because I had no idea where I was supposed to be going.
Yes, that is the important thing, because you don't want to show up and not be there. And if you know your rules, a lot of places you can, if you don't have your voter ID card, you get by with your ID and all that stuff. But in any event, don't complain. Go vote. There you are. We got a 4-game slate. We're, of course, recording this on Monday night, so this will be your first look foundational podcast. That's why we call it the Early Bird series. Promo code EarlyBird, all one word, gets you 7 free days of Osmo premium content. That includes everything: Slack, Fantasy Cruncher, add-on, all of the projections, all of the premium articles, all of the goodness. Looking at our games, we have all of the over-unders. Adam, we've got Atlanta going into Charlotte, who is all of a sudden surprising. Gosh, they get rid of Dwight Howard, and they turn into a good team by unleashing Kemba Walker, but they're favored by 11, 233 over-under. We have Washington going into Dallas. Washington is 1-point road favorites. They're going to lose anyway. Brooklyn and Phoenix, boy, these are all the great teams playing tonight. That's actually a pick'em in Phoenix. And then with the 220 over-under. And Milwaukee at Portland, that is also a pick'em with a 229 over-under. For injuries, we are looking at Luka Doncic has a sore ankle. We know that Otto Porter missed the last game over the weekend with, I think it was a sore toe. TJ Warren has a back injury. Nick Stauskas has a bruised quad. And then they're listing Devin Harris as questionable, Adam. He played 6 minutes in the season opener and hasn't played since. So I think he's on the Udonis Haslem keep cashing those checks plan. Any other news that you're aware of that I didn't cover here?
Otto Porter upgraded to probable. Not sure if you had seen that or not, but he's updated to probable. Okay. That's the only thing that I have to add.
All right, well, let's get in, because there are just 4 games. We will go game by game here. We're going to turn Adam loose because he gets to start off with our favorite player in one of our favorite teams, Kemba Walker. Tasty matchup going against Atlanta here. How are you feeling about Kemba?
I like him. I mean, it's a little bit concerning because we now have had 3 straight disappointing Kemba games in a row, and more so than, being upset about the actual results, it has been a little bit alarming in that we haven't seen quite as much usage from him or aggressiveness on the offensive end recently. But I still am going to operate under the assumption that that's more of a blip on the radar than anything. And this is an absolutely phenomenal matchup for him, as he gets a huge boost in pace taking on this Atlanta team, who also has been one of the worst teams at defending the pick and roll this season. Kemba, of course, the league leader in pick and roll possessions per game by a wide margin. And he's also one of the most efficient in terms of points per possession. So just an absolutely phenomenal matchup for Kemba. There's no reason to expect him to struggle here. There wasn't reason to expect him to struggle against the Cavaliers either, but I think this is actually even a better spot when you factor in the pace and the fact that Atlanta is specifically bad at defending the thing that Kemba does all the time. So really, really love Kemba here. The price tag is getting up there. He's up to 9,300 on DraftKings, which is, I'm not looking at historical data, but that feels like one of the highest price points I've ever really seen Kemba at. But I still think that, especially on a 4-game slate, that's a really good play. Beyond that, though, you kind of run into a bunch of moving parts because the Charlotte rotation has been so, I guess, volatile lately. We've seen Tony Parker getting more minutes alongside Kemba, which I think makes him a really interesting value play. But you also, see Jeremy Lamb sometimes lose minutes. You've seen Nick Batum play 32 minutes a lot more frequently than he used to. Miles Bridges is also picking up minutes. It's kind of become a mess outside of Kemba Walker.
Adding to the mess, of course, we do have Malik Monk. You mentioned Jeremy Lamb. It looks like they might be siphoning some of the shot attempts that Kemba had. Throughout the season, he has 2 games where he has 31 shot attempts, one with 22, but he hasn't topped. He's averaged just over a dozen over his last 3 games. He's been nailing it from the line all season, and even though he was a little bit disappointing in the last game against Cleveland, that game was well in hand. As we continue down here, the guy I do like, Tony Parker. Big heavy sigh. I really liked him when he had a 3 in front of his price tag here on DraftKings. Now he is only 4,200, but I really need to get 20 minutes from him, and he has only topped 20 minutes twice this season. Now 2 of the last 3 games he's done that, but that seems to be kind of the breaking point where we need him to go. Otherwise, he's got to nail his shots. Now, all of that said, nice matchup against Atlanta. So I do think we'll want to keep an eye on Tony Parker. And then have you figured out what is happening with the respective Hernan Gomez brothers? We've got Guillermo Hernan Gomez for Charlotte, and his production has just bounced around all over the place. His minutes have, et cetera. He's more of a hustle guy, but he's 3,500. We're on a 4-game slate. Is he worth someone you can consider on DraftKings?
In large field tournaments, if you're playing a bunch of lineups, then yes. He is splitting center minutes basically with Cody Zeller. Zeller the normal projection that I give to Charlotte's front court is around 26 or 27 minutes for Cody Zeller, around 16 for Hernan Gomez, and then 4 or 5 for Marvin Williams. But if Cody Zeller gets in foul trouble, like we saw against the Cavaliers, Hernan Gomez is going to be the one to benefit. And he's such a productive guy when he does get extra minutes that he's the sort of player that I do like mixing into a small percentage of my lineups, just because there's going to be, a handful of games every season where, we saw one against Cleveland where he runs into 20 minutes because Zeller picked up his second and third foul in the first 2 minutes of the third quarter. And you had Hernan Gomez sub in, at the 10-minute mark, play the entire rest of the third quarter and the first 2 minutes of the fourth quarter. So, and he's never owned, so it's not like you have to have a lot of him. So in that regard, I think you can look there. But in terms of actually projecting him to do anything, you really can't.
Moving along to Atlanta here, we do have, some conflicting information here for Taurean Prince. I've got one site listing him as questionable, one site listing him as doubtful. He has been dealing with an ankle sprain, which he suffered in the fourth quarter of Saturday night's game. So keep an eye on that. John Collins is still out. I do want to mention him. He is not feeling pain in his ankle. He is going to be starting to practice and ramp up. However, it still could be up to 3 or 4 weeks before he plays in a game. So that's a surprising one. But I guess with Atlanta more interested in draft picks, they're just going to let him, get healthy the Philadelphia 76ers way. So that potentially could give us a little more minutes here for somebody like Kent Bazemore. It could be an Alex Len night. It could be a Dwayne Dedmon night. Everybody is just seemingly cannibalizing each other outside of Trey Young. And the reason we like him is because he gets assists and he gets a boatload of shot attempts. When the kid misses, it's not going to be a good night. When he hits, it's going to be a great night. He has in his 8, was that about 10 games this season, he has gone over 40 fantasy points 3 times, one at 56, and one of those was at 60. That's some pretty hefty upside. Let's start at the top with Trey Young. Again, 4-game slate. Where are you putting him on your desirability list?
I like him. He should get more usage without Taurean Prince as well. Prince is the leader on the team in usage rate. Trey Young comes in at second. So you should see a boost from him in at least his shot volume. It probably won't do any favors for his efficiency, given that one of the other top scorers on the team won't be there. But I think that as far as upside goes, it really helps. And then beyond that, you can go to this team for value now. We had seen these value guys kind of all become unplayable because as the Hawks got healthier, you started seeing them kind of cannibalize each other, like you had said. But now I think you see DeAndre Bembry with a clear uptick in minutes. He's basically Taurean Prince's direct backup. So you should see an uptick for him. Also, Kevin Huerter should run into some more minutes. Amari Spellman started their most recent game over Vince Carter, played about 20 minutes. There's more minutes to go around now. So I think that Spellman, Bembry, and Kevin Huerter are guys that I'm going to want to be rotating through lineups because I think there's a good chance at least one of them does well.
All right. Only thing I got about Charlotte is, do you remember where Vince Carter played basketball in college?
North Carolina. I was thinking you said Kemba Walker, and I was just like, UConn?
No. Charlotte, it's kind of like North Carolina. Just saying, potential homecoming. He's 41, 42. He's got to find a reason to get up for some of these games. Could be his last tour through Tobacco Road. I don't know. Just throwing that out there. He's 3,200. He won't be in the player pool. Think of him as a discounted Stanley Johnson and be sufficiently terrified. Looking at the rest of this, the only guy we didn't really hit on is Jeremy Lin. We will see flashes. I reaped the benefits of his first two of his last three games with glorious 27 and 28 fantasy point appearances. I rode that one night too many. He had 3 shot attempts against Miami, a very disappointing 14 fantasy points. Your mileage may vary. We're talking about him because it's a 4-game slate, so you're going to want to put him in the Tony Parker punt category. Moving along to our local team. I'm not going to say favorite team anymore. I'm still auditioning teams, Adam. I'm still auditioning teams for a new favorite, but our local team, the Washington Wizards, will be in Dallas. We have John Wall, who has been sufficiently mediocre, which is not what you want from your franchise's best player. I would normally be all excited to go to DeAndre Jordan at the other side, but he has had some disappointing games of late. What do you have here amongst the stars? And then we have Dwight Howard, who is looks like he's going to be playing 30 minutes a game, and as long as his buttocks do not bother him during the game, it's similar to the sciatic nerve. We should see him flirting with a double-double every night. But as he's crept up to 6,100 on DraftKings, is he worthwhile?
Yeah, I love the Wizards starters here because you can tell that this team already is kind of in desperation mode, and Scott Brooks is going to play his starters as much as he possibly can. You had John Wall in their most recent game against the Knicks. Keep in mind that Washington had a healthy lead in the fourth quarter, and so Wall came out of the game a minute and a half early. He still played 38 minutes. So he was on track to play, close to 40 minutes if that game had been more competitive. Bradley Beal did play 40 minutes, and he came out early. And Dwight Howard, he finished at 30 and a half minutes. He lost 4 minutes to foul trouble in the second quarter. He lost that same minute and 30 seconds at the end of the game. So he even Dwight Howard in his second game back after missing preseason and the beginning of this season is looking like he's going to play 35, 36 minutes. So these guys are just playing monster minutes. It's a nice matchup against Dallas. And there's certainly value when you have players of this caliber. As bad as this Washington team has been, there's no question that John Wall, Bradley Beal, Dwight Howard, Markieff Morris, when he's not getting, ejected from games or in foul trouble, they're all very, very productive fantasy players. And they're going to be playing a ton of minutes here. So especially on a 4-game slate where there are less options, I want to just load up on these guys because, Otto Porter as well, 5,100. I expect he'll play less minutes than the rest of that group, but that price tag is still very nice. But overall, you just have these guys that are locked into monster minutes at very reasonable prices.
All right, Otto Porter has played in 8 games. Can you tell me how many he has topped 20 DraftKings points?
Probably like 1.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is a downtrodden Wizards fan. Actually 3, but I feel your pain there. Feel your pain. Looking at a couple of the other cheapies that we do want to mention, Jeff Green, he's going to have moments from time to time. He's 4,000, and he's available at either power forward spot. Again, we're going to be looking for some guys to round out our roster if we're doing a mass multi-entry. Kelly Oubre at 4,900 got about the same production with the starters that he does in his customary rotation role. We've seen that over the last 3 years with him. When he steps into the starting lineup, it does not always equate to production. He does not necessarily defer as much as he used to when 2 years ago, just because he was like, oh, good, I'm with the starters. I'm not even 21. Holy hell, what's going on? He's used to it now, but he still doesn't get as many most of his stuff is done on drives to the basket and filling the lane when he's with the starters, so it gets to be a little frustrating. He doesn't look for his own shot. Outside of that, last guy we'll look at before we transition, or as we transition, I can't believe I'm going to say it, Adam, but Dorian Finney-Smith. All right, I've acknowledged it. No, I don't think we want to play him. In his last game, yeah, he had 35 fantasy points. That's probably going to be his high for the season. He was also 8 for 10 from the field with a season high, or a season tying high, of 7 rebounds, a season high of 2 steals. I don't think we're going to see him crest over 20 fantasy points. What do you got here as we go back up the pricing list with Dallas? Oh, keeping in mind.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously.
Sorry, Doncic did practice on Monday, so he is probably going to play. They say game time decision, but leaning towards playing.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, that's obviously the big news, because if he doesn't play, it's going to mean that the ball is in Danna Smith's hands more. It's going to be a usage bump for Smith. You're going to see more usage for Harrison Barnes, for Matthews. You're going to see more minutes for JJ Barea, possibly Jalen Brunson. But if he's going to play, then it just becomes kind of the same analysis that we've had all season long, where he's a phenomenal option in a pace-up game against a really bad Wizards defense. You really just have to love him, because he does so much, whether it's scoring, picking up assists, grabbing rebounds. Danna Smith Jr., I like a lot as well. His price tag he's been underpriced for a while now. Looking to see what he is in this 5,700, still a really nice price tag for him in this spot. I like Harrison Barnes at 5,500. I really think that this entire Dallas team is just too cheap for a fast-paced Wizards team that also does not play defense.
Now, the one guy since you are going to be writing the deep dive, I know you'll be looking at some of the rotations and such. I'm curious to see if Dwight Powell ends up as a potential discount dandy for you at 3,500. Again, we're scraping the bottom of the barrel here, but we only have an 8-team player pool. He is looks like he's come out of his doldrums. He continues to play about the same minutes, but he's taking his shots back to taking more shots per game, as opposed to 1, 2, or 3. He's back up to 5 or 6, and that makes a difference with him, because that he should scrap for some boards, and all of a sudden you got him hit a couple shots, scrapping for some boards, and he can flirt with 20 fantasy points. Now, we've been saying on some of the larger slates here that 20 fantasy points, even from your cheapies, is just not going to get that done anymore. At 3,500 on a short slate, yes, 20 fantasy points would get it done in the tournaments. Anything else from this game?
I like that call too, just because, Powell's minutes are limited because of DeAndre Jordan, but this Wizards team has been one of the worst rebounding teams in the NBA, and the return of Dwight Howard should help with that. But Dwight Powell's still going to be going up against either Jan Mahinmi, Jeff Green, someone who is pretty likely to let Powell get rebounds, and the pace of the game plays to Powell's strengths as well. Also on DraftKings, he's forward and center eligible. On FanDuel, you can drop his price, or you can drop his score. So he's actually a pretty interesting option if better value doesn't open up. I agree.
All right, on to Brooklyn and Phoenix. A bit of a pick'em here. Should be a spirited game, because I don't think either team really wants to win, but they've got a lot of players that they can get to look at. We've got Devin Booker, who's been reined in somewhat, a little bit disappointing of late for his price tag. DeAndre Ayton, just absolutely phenomenal. Gosh, I bet there's a ton of teams out there that wish they had him on their roster. Speaking of talented guys, 5,200 on DraftKings, Jarrett Allen. This feels like a game where some of the veterans may not get theirs. We may see less Trevor Ariza, less Ed Davis and guys like that, while these young, springy guys that can leap out of the gym and chuck them from way downtown get the run. What are you looking at from this game?
Yeah, so I like Ariza. Like, he's still getting huge minutes here.
Why is that happening? I keep waiting for that to go away. It's like, good God, the guy played with Kobe. Come on.
Well, I mean, they're, I assume, going to trade him at the deadline, so it's in their interest to let him actually show that he is still good. But so I mean, he played 39 minutes against Memphis, and he was actually very, very productive. One thing that stands out with him, and it makes sense because of the way that Phoenix is assembled, he actually has been picking up assists this season. He has, a double-digit assist percentage, and that adds to what in Houston was, a very scoring-dependent player. Not completely the case anymore. So where he's still cheap, I actually like him. Devin Booker said that he's still playing through pain, which is obviously concerning. He ended up having a decent stat line against Memphis, but it all came in the fourth quarter. Going into the fourth quarter, for most of the game, he was having an awful game. Granted, Memphis is a very difficult matchup in terms of pace and their quality defensive team. So this is a better spot for Booker. It's just worth noting that he did acknowledge that he's still hurting. DeAndre Ayton, I absolutely love, playing huge minutes, 35, 36 minutes a night. And he's able to do, pretty much everything when he's on the floor as well. Only $7,500. So out of the Memphis guys looking at their DraftKings pricing, $7,500 for Ayton, I love. Booker, I like. I'm just concerned about the injury. Isaiah Cannon's fine as a value play that should play close to 30 minutes. And then Trevor Ariza, at 4,900, even more appealing if TJ Warren does sit this one out, because it'll mean, more field goal attempts for Ariza.
All right. I was just looking up because I was curious to see what Ariza's contract was. So a $15 million contract is just a 1-year deal. So those are easier to move than others. What would you think they would get for him? They'll trade him to a contender. Hell, would it be that shocking if he ended up back on Houston? Did they get like some sort of deferred second-round pick? Because, you only have first-round and second-round picks. Ariza's not going to get a first-round pick.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't follow like that side of the NBA, so I really have no idea.
All right, and he's only 33. I thought he was older than that. He's 9 years younger than Vince Carter.
Wow.
That's impressive for Vince, is what that is.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's see. Moving back to current day NBA players, Deangelo Russell. Is he just going to be this guy who gets in the mid-20s for minutes, averages about a fantasy point per minute, and every now and then when we've completely forgotten about him, crests over 40 fantasy points in a contest and you see him in the tournament leaderboards?
Most likely, because he is basically playing second fiddle now to Karis LeVert. LeVert has the higher usage rate. LeVert is picking up a ton of assists. He has the ball in his hands a lot. It is worth noting that Russell lost about 3 minutes of fourth quarter playing time in a blowout win against Philadelphia in that last game. So, and that was the first time we'd actually seen him on the floor in the fourth quarter in his last 2 or 3 games. So it's concerning basically for everyone on Brooklyn except for Karis LeVert and Jared Allen, because minutes have just been fluctuating so much. And Russell's price at $6K, it's fine, but it's still not great. I will say that I was surprised. He was only 8% owned on Sunday on a 6-game slate at $5,700. If he's going to be low owned again, then I'll absolutely roster him again at $6K, because he does have upside, but you just have to keep in mind that he's going to play probably 27, 28 minutes.
Yep. With LeVert, one thing to keep in mind, he's got some great box scores, but he also has 11 steals in his last 4 games. That's a phenomenally unsustainable rate. He should be keep creeping up to about 2 steals per game. He's at 1.5 now, and I think that's he'll be one of the great defensive. Let me rephrase that. He will be someone that approaches 2 steals per game for the next several years of his career. I don't know whether that makes him a great defensive player or not, but he is pretty active in the passing lanes, and he's kind of rangy. So it's cool to see that, where you can utilize things like that. DraftKings, it's only 2 points per steal, but on FanDuel and on the draft app, it's 3 for steals and blocks. So those really add up quickly. So just wanted to point that one out. Anything else from this matchup?
No.
Takes us to the nightcap, the late night hammer, shall we say. The 10 o'clock game is in Portland. We have Giannis Antetokounmpo. We'll be doing a battle with Damian Lillard. This should be a fun and exciting game. We've got, Yusuf Nurkic he's going to tease us. At some point, the music's going to stop at him. We're going to be left with 30 or 40% of him on our rosters and a 19 or 20 fantasy point dud. But he has just been posting great game after great game, and he's doing it on the strength of rebounding and basically not missing his field goals, which is pretty impressive. By the way, he's also splashed 2 3-pointers this season, and he's averaging 1.2 3-point attempts per game.
Yeah,
Would you have guessed that? Because those all aren't end of the quarter chucks.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, Nurkic is just one of my favorite fantasy players. He's one of my favorite tournament plays. He plays 30 to 32 minutes when he's not in foul trouble, and he's a 1.2 to 1.3 fantasy point per minute guy. And his price tag is always a little bit low because of the risk that comes with how frequently he either gets in foul trouble or loses minutes to Zach Collins, occasionally having a phenomenal game off the bench and stealing some minutes. But the ceiling's just, so nice at 6,700. It's a perfectly fine spot against Brook Lopez and John Henson. So I will be going right back to Yusuf Nurkic here. And on the other, you mentioned Lillard McCollum. I've been playing a lot more McCollum than Lillard just because Lillard obviously has the much higher ceiling, but in terms of actual projections, I just don't really end up getting them that far apart, or at least far enough apart to justify Lillard's price tag pushing $10,000. Obviously Lillard projects as the better player, the higher scoring player, but to me, he's still like an $8,500 guy, not a $10K guy, just because he had, a couple of monster games earlier this season. So out of the two of them, I'm more likely to end up going to CJ McCollum.
All right. Mo Harkless is going to be out yet again. He hasn't played in over a week now, and prior to that, he was minutes capped with that knee injury that he has. Looking at some of the discounted guys. Oh, do we have Pat Connaughton coming back to Portland?
Oh, yeah.
Did you even know he was with the Bucks this year?
I totally forgot. Yeah. Is he still with the Orioles?
I don't know. I'll have to look that up. But anyway, looking at some of these guys not named Giannis, I don't really know who I like. I'm okay with Middleton, but he is more – well, everything's a tournament play at this point. But he is more of a guy I really only consider in tournaments, and I usually try to make sure I've got him on teams where I don't have Giannis. I like Eric Bledsoe, but I'm not really fond of this particular matchup, and Bledsoe's been a little bit disappointing of late, but this is when those guys turn it on. It's a long season. You need to go back and look at matchups, see who they faced, etc. But they're reasonable plays. But I don't really feel good about anybody except for probably Giannis, Brogdon, and then maybe a dart throw for Ersan Ilyasova. And that doesn't even feel good. You're expecting about 20, 23 minutes from Ersan, but the Trailblazers play big enough that he should have somebody out there that they won't run him off the floor. I think it's a better way to say that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can, with it being a 4-game slate, you can look to the cheap guys like Lopez, Ilyasova, to hopefully just knock down their shots and be productive. Giannis has gotten expensive too. Finally, he's been my favorite fantasy player this season, but now that he's finally pushing $13,000, he's getting close to where I think he actually should be. Still no issue with him, but on a short slate like this, two things normally happen. One, you see people force him in because he's Giannis and there aren't that many options and they want Giannis in their lineup. And two, there's not a ton of great value because there's only 8 teams to find value from. So a lot of times when that happens, you end up, there's an edge in just going mid-range, especially in tournaments, getting a higher ceiling instead of using some bad punts that everyone else is playing as well. So if good value doesn't open up, I'd be fine, going away from Giannis and hoping that we get a good game from someone like Middleton or Bledsoe. But if there is value, then obviously, I love Giannis. Nothing's changed there.
All right. The Pat Connaughton question is, he only pitched for them in 2014. And I
didn't know he'd ever pitched for them. I knew they drafted him. I didn't know he had ever actually played anything.
Yeah, he had a little bit of action there, but outside of that, he is not. He's still listed in some articles as being a potential pitching option. I don't even want to say option. They have his rights. I think people just kind of write those somewhat fluff pieces because it's a neat story that someone has ascended into, albeit the minor leagues, but to professional sports.
Yeah. I mean, he was like a third or a fourth. He was a high draft pick, like third or fourth round. I just didn't know if they still. I didn't know if they still had his rights or if those were gone.
It looks like they do, but it just the last article was written in the summer of 2017, and it was saying he was still a potential guy for meaning potential, a fringe candidate out there. So I would assume that probably means he does. I forget how.
There was talk. There was talk last year that if he didn't have a good, because going into last year he was like on the end of the Portland bench and wasn't getting any playing time, and there was talk that he was going to go back to baseball, and then he cracked the rotation and played well, and I remember I was actually pretty upset.
Well, and by playing well, you mean he was getting 8 to 11 points on the bench?
Well, yeah, he showed that he can be a fringe rotation guy.
Right. But hey, you're in the top 1% of the top 1% when you're doing that. So
he showed that he can continue to make a living playing basketball.
Yes. Well said. Any other things from this game? I mean, it's kind of going to be a crapshoot there with the Minu or Turner or. Again, the guys, there's about 4 guys we're intrigued by. Giannis, you're paying through the nose at 12.6. As you mentioned, Lillard and McCollum, take the discount, go to McCollum. Brogdon is sufficiently discounted. And then for me, kind of Ersan Ilyasova. I would have thought there'd be more from this game, but there just really isn't without injuries, it looks like.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm right there with you. It's just a bunch of guys that you can, sure, if you're playing 150 lineups, rotate them through, they're fine, but nothing that I'm prioritizing.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us. We are going to get on out of here. You could follow Adam at ShipMyMoneyDFS. I am at EMACDFS. And, of course, you can follow the Awesemo.com account. It is Awesemo_COM. That would be like Awesemo.com. But on Twitter, you can't use the dot. You got to use the underscore. With that, gamers, good luck.